Here's where I want to start off with this. Because just a couple of months ago, I mean, this young man seemed like a lock for the University of Southern California. He did decide, along with his parents, he wanted to do a southeastern tour to visit Alabama, Ole Miss, and Auburn. But I don't know that anybody seriously thought that he would wind up anywhere else other than Southern Cal. What happened?
Well, Alabama happened. His family took a visit to Tuscaloosa a few weeks ago. I guess it was about 3.5 weeks ago. The entire family flew out to Tuscaloosa, and the original plan was to spend a couple days in Tuscaloosa, then go over to Auburn, and then spend a day at Ole Miss, and then head back to Hawaii. Well, what they ended up doing is they flew into Tuscaloosa on a Thursday. They spent Thursday, Friday, then Saturday morning in Tuscaloosa visiting Alabama. They ended up going over to Auburn, and they ended up going over to Ole Miss. But then they ended up canceling their trip back to Hawaii. They came back to Alabama, spent Sunday, Monday, all of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then didn't fly out back to Hawaii until Thursday. So they spent almost a week in Tuscaloosa just visiting the campus, spending time with the coaching staff, getting just acclimated to everything there was at Alabama, and they just fell in love. They said that it was an environment that felt like they were at home. They said that people were just so grateful, so respectful, so nice that they just couldn't believe it. They just loved every single thing about Alabama, that it was so much different than any other college that they went to, and they were so impressed with the academics. They said that Alabama has a lot of resources that a lot of other schools, they may have, but they just didn't, express those resources to them when they visited those campuses. So they just loved everything about Alabama. And I talked to his father probably about an hour before the announcement last night, and he was just telling me just the comfort level that they felt at Alabama was just so much different than anywhere else that they visited, and they felt very comfortable sending Tua to Alabama.
You said a mouthful there, Andrew, but I'm going to go ahead and follow up with what you were saying about the hospitality. And Nick Saban's not exactly known as warm and fuzzy, but there's no doubt to recruits. He can connect with recruits on different levels. And, the Polynesian people in Hawaii, they're all about hospitality, the luau's, making people feel comfortable and at home. And as you said, that really registered with him and his family, not just from an athletic standpoint at Alabama, the facilities, we know how important football is, but the campus, the students, the faculty, how warm and inviting people are. Andrew, I see it every day with regular students that'll come in and visit from Connecticut or New York or Washington State or somewhere, and they get here and they just fall in love with the campus. It sounds like that's what happened with this family. They just got here to Tuscaloosa, as you said, and just fell in love with the place.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. And like I said, his father told me, he said, and even Tua told me last night, he said, from the get-go, I was going to USC. And that's the school that I was going to. I had no idea that I was going to be going to the University of Alabama. I asked him, I said, when did you kind of know that Alabama was where you were going to go? Or, when did you even think Alabama was a possibility for you? He said, I really didn't think about it until I visited the campus. He said, I was going to USC. That's where I was going to school. And then I just visited Alabama, and just everything changed for me. And, you see sometimes a lot of these recruits from the West Coast, they end up, they visit Alabama, and, it's, on their first time visiting, they're really surprised by everything they see, because they just don't think, a city like Tuscaloosa is going to be just as great as it is, and in terms of football, and they get there and they're just kind of blown away by everything. That the culture is just so much different than it is on the West Coast. Now, obviously, Hawaii is a few hours from California, but he really liked it a lot, and I don't think a lot of people said even if he commits to Alabama, he probably will still end up signing with USC or UCLA, and I just didn't get that vibe at all. You get that vibe sometimes when you talk to recruits when they commit that there's a chance that they could end up going somewhere else, and that they're going to continue to take their visits, and this may be just a commitment for the next few months until they start taking their official visits. But I certainly didn't get that vibe last night, speaking to his father and speaking to him about his decision. They seem very locked in with Alabama.